You're tuning into the Journey to Your Best Self podcast, where we explore the past holistic well-being, personal growth, and living a fulfilling life. Each episode, we bring you insightful conversations, practical tools, and inspiring stories to help you integrate your mind, body, and spirit on your journey to becoming your best self. Let's dive in and embark on this journey together. And welcome back to another episode of the Journey to Your Best Self podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian O'Neill, joined by my sister, clinical hypnotherapist, certified life coach, and yoga instructor, Tara O'Neill. Today, we have the absolute pleasure to talk with this incredible guest whose personal story of transformation and self-discovery is sure to inspire and motivate you to take bold steps towards living authentically. And that's exactly what we like to do on Journey to Your Best Self. Joining us today is Michael Rosenberg, a transformational speaker and mentor who helps individuals break free from societal expectations and live lives that reflect their true essence. After a pivotal experience in a high school football game left him feeling lost and directionless for nearly 2 decades, Michael underwent a spiritual awakening that reignited his passion and set him on a journey of global exploration, self-reclamation, and personal power. Today, Michael helps others overcome their own limiting beliefs and find transformational joy. So he'll be sharing those powerful insights with us. I think there's going to be something for everyone in our audience listening today. How help you overcome your fears, provide practical tools that are going to create lasting change. There's a lot of actionable stuff that he has here, a lot that we touch upon at Your One Self and Journey to Your Best Self. So without any further ado, Michael, welcome aboard.
Thank you, guys. Hey, Brian. Hey, Tara. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. We're really excited. You're a wonderful speaker. I'm hoping that you can enlighten us a bit with your words.
Yeah, and doing a little bit of research and in our correspondence leading up to this, it seems like you're a man of two lives, really. There's a clear delineation between that kind of career, that success path that we always hear about, right? That the people that are quote unquote in Western and especially American society follow, right? High school, college, career, kids, rinse, repeat. But then you, at some point, decided to kind of step outside of that path. And it seems like you've been having a hell of a lot of fun and excitement and transformational bliss doing it. So was there a pivotal moment? Can you take us back to, what changed for you? What happened? Take it away.
Absolutely. Yeah. Living two lives. I love how you described that, and it made me think of just creating balance in our lives. I feel like that's kind of what I did somehow. But yeah, I spent a long time in the corporate world in sales, B2B, knocking on doors, generating leads, 50 doors a day, rejection, burnout, the whole nine. It's a very performance-driven industry. And I burned out so much that over so many years, I was just on my wit's end thinking there's got to be more to life. I always felt this potential within me to do something meaningful, something passionate with my life, but just couldn't figure out where to plug that into. Maybe some of your viewers can relate. So what happened is I stayed in this career for 11 years, just hoping that maybe a promotion, maybe more money, maybe more success, something would make me happier. Nothing ever did. And essentially I started building what I would call my spiritual personal development path on the side. And the first thing to trigger that is I went to India in 2016 with just a backpack, no hotel reservation. I jumped in and I just said, let's just mix it up and see where this goes. It was a super wild trip, only 10 days, because that's all I could get off from work at the time. Who goes to India just for 10 days? But it planted that travel bug in me. And I couldn't get it out of my mind after that. And I was like, I want to see the world. And I was watching friends out there having cool trips. One worked for National Geographic. I just thought it was never a possibility for me. But since that India trip, I began just awakening, however you want to call it, spiritually, energetically, in my mind, and new friends, new transformational experiences, new passions, everything just started filling my life. So I would bring it to 2019 would really be that main moment that shifted everything. And I was invited to go on this trip swimming with wild dolphins in Bimini, Bahamas. And the dolphins have always been my favorite animal. They're also my favorite football team. No coincidence. And I, after swimming with these dolphins, you got dozens of dolphins around you in the middle of the ocean, eye to eye. They're very high conscious creatures. I came back to the shore and I was just in tears. I was just so in awe. And I was looking out at the horizon and I was just thinking, I want more of this in my life. I want more of this feeling. And I looked at my friend and I said, I'm done. I'm not going back to corporate. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but somehow I'm going to travel the world. Took me about a year to figure that out. And I went and did it.
Wow, excellent. Wow. A lot of people are stuck like you were. With sales, it can be tough too because a lot of times if you have kind of an ethical or moral center, not to disparage any companies that we may have worked for, any products that we may have sold, but when you start to see what actually goes on behind the scenes that the customer might not see, whether it's what the actual cost is, what the markdown is, right, or what the commission is, what you have to kind of be opaque and not let them know necessarily what's happening. That can be difficult to sit with, right? Did you find that that was something that was keeping you up at night, was difficult to go in every day, not believing in what you were doing? Was it sales specific that started to, fester that itch in you, you think?
Yeah, this is a great question, Brian. No one's asked me this in a while. Yes, it had a lot to do with it. And I always say now too, like I'm not knocking sales, right? The way that I learned it, the way that I was brought into it wasn't for me. It's interesting because I'm learning how to heal my relationship with sales and bring it back into my life now. But back then, I found that number one, working for a lot of corporations, they give you a lot of models, like do it this way and you will be successful. And I was tired of hearing that because I wasn't seeing the success and I didn't feel like the model was like realistic for me. So it was this, again, one size fits all, and I just could never quite get in it. And then for sure, I've always considered myself a pretty moral person, pretty well-rounded, good guy, try to do right by everybody. And I was working primarily in service-based industries where a lot of problems would go wrong on the service end. A lot of the people that were training me, that were bringing me into appointments, were also, I would see some of the stuff they would do in appointments, and it was misleading. And I felt that a lot of my peers around me were kind of doing it the same way. Everybody was so money motivated and money hungry that that's all it came down to. And I found myself torn inside many times because I'd have to go sell a service, kind of knowing in some aspects it's not going to really work well for the customer, knowing some of the things that can go wrong on the back end, just following a script. And it started to eat at me a bit inside. The other big thing I noticed over time is that I'm not really a money motivated guy. And I was in a money motivated kind of business. So there was a misalignment from the start. Not that I don't want money, I want lots of money like everybody else, but there needs to be more meaning, substance, and I more see money as like a byproduct, or at least I want to earn it in a healthier way now.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned alignment. Can we just go right into that? What is alignment, right? We hear that a lot now, being in alignment, or sometimes with authenticity. And I'm curious, what do people do to find their alignment, right? Can you speak to this magical word that we really want to be? I always think of this, right? Alignment. But that's just me now, but I've spent a lot of years living like this. So could you speak to the alignment?
Sure, sure. It's funny because I've looked at this question before, and there's just so many ways to describe it. I feel like many people have their own interpretation of what it is. I also see it as this kind of straight beam coming down, but I think of alignment as everything has to anchor into something. So, what are you anchoring into? And really that becomes a little bit of a self discovery process because if you're living your life, your actions, your thoughts, all your motivations from a place that's not really solid and true for you. For example, I really want to change people's lives, and this is important for my well-being, this and this. These are like good solid things to have at your core to anchor into. But if you come from, well, I'm just trying to survive and I'm really acting from fear, or these crazy sporadic tendencies that I picked up somewhere, at the end of the day, everything is energy at its core. So everything that you build from that, every action you take from that, is going to carry that same energy. So I see alignment as a discovery process that takes some time to coming into what your values are, what's important to you, what your non-negotiables are in life, in all domains, like what you need for your health, what you need for your job, like what kind of people you're going to allow around you. Are you going to allow people that are uplifting and supporting you, or toxic people that are trying to tear you down? There's so much that goes into it. And I feel that it takes some time to investigate and uncover that. But when it begins to reveal who you are at your core, like what's true beyond just the roles that you've taken on in society, and that's what I really learned for myself, then you can come back to this anchor point, right, with your values and like what you want to create from there. And then alignment is everything that happens from that point. It's your thoughts, it's your actions, it's your emotions. It gives you like a map where, as things come your way in life, you can say, this is in alignment, this fits with who I am, and this is not. And if you sometimes choose the direction of something that's not, out of a place of, who knows, scarcity, fear, it can come back to bite you, or you might not be very happy moving forward.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to describe it, because I do think that we need to find, ourselves in order to be in alignment with ourselves. Though, it can change over the course of your journey, right? So your alignment wasn't like we live in, decades of misalignment per se, because our priorities change. So what would you tell somebody that is, maybe a little type A on the spiritual path, like, I got to get in alignment, like right now, how can we calm them down? How can we get them focused and centered in finding their why or their center?
Yeah, I love what you said, Tara, about how it can change, because we are always creating ourselves. We constantly change. Like what I used to think was in alignment for me just started not to be after a certain amount of time, right? And that's just growing. That's just, hey, I'm growing in one direction, and the things, people in my life are growing in another direction. So alignment changes as well. And yeah, sometimes these spiritual words get thrown on things like alignment, and they're almost used to kind of bypass like what's actually going on. My answer to this question would be, just start simple and what makes sense to you. I feel, I'm a guy too who got very caught up in like definitions and trying to draw this whole big map and over analyze in my mind if I was there or not. And like, I need the alignment now and I need to be here and there. And that just for me created like more forcing things. So it just starts with maybe investigating like, what are some simple truths that are true for me. A journaling practice is a great way to start that. Also like an inventory of your life, because most people don't stop to slow down to actually ask, you know if what's going on around them is actually fits their vision for themselves. Creating a vision for yourself, like sitting down, doing this journaling process, and just, but being, I believe, curious and playful with it. Anytime you bring an energy of curiosity and playfulness, it keeps things light without all that pressure. And knowing that you can shift things in and out of the alignment almost like a pair of clothes. I can try this on today. Let's see if it feels good. If it doesn't feel good, I'll take it off. But I got to experiment at least to find out. So that's my approach to kind of everything, to spirituality, to self-improvement. It's got to be fun, or else what are we doing? It becomes this, I have to do this to-do list and be this person, and it can block you more than help you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost as if we take our avatar from the corporate world and we just plop it in the spiritual one, and that can be, and that's fine. It's part of the journey of discovering. But I really appreciate the curiosity and playfulness. That is those are two wonderful words to use. And also, like you're saying, people maybe that are listening couldn't see you, but you could just see the flow of energy as you were as Michael was moving. And it was a loose and flowy energy, and that's the curiosity and playfulness, I believe, that you're trying to convey. So thank you for that. One more question before I pass it over back to Brian. What were you thinking on the flight to India? What was going through your mind? Were you like, really, this is how I spent my 10-day vacation? Or like, oh, I'm going to find that one thing that's going to change everything?
This is so good that you asked me this. You guys are asking me some questions I haven't been asked in a while. I love the creativity here. I laugh because I went over there thinking one thing and it was a totally different thing. I was like, so I had a friend back out of a trip. We were supposed to go to Thailand. I never heard from him again, like a best friend. It was a very strange story how I got there. And so I said, well, I want to take this spiritual adventure and explore myself. I'm going to go to India. And I've always had this, I don't know, like I challenged myself. So I was like, let me go play survival and pack a bag and not make a hotel reservation. I said, India is going to be so blissful. I'm so excited. I'm going to go meditate on a rock. I'm probably going to become kind of enlightened in some kind of way. I'm going to come back like all filled up, and my purpose is going to be waiting there for me when I get back. And my first day was one of the most turbulent days of my entire life. I mean, the culture shock alone, coming out of the airport, seeing cows in the street right when you get out there. And then they took me to this terrible place that was in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, no, we got to move on from here. Didn't like that hotel. Didn't know where I wanted to go or what town. I thought I was going to go on this pilgrimage in the Northwest, and I didn't know where I was when I got there. And I asked a taxi driver. He's like, I wouldn't go there because it's a really dangerous train ride. So, and then I found myself just in the middle of nowhere at a train track by a hut, couldn't read the language. And I really, for the first time in my life, had a true, like, oh crap moment. Like I could be in trouble here. And it's a whole story about that first day, but the whole trip was just up and down and up and down and an emotional roller coaster. I was like crying by the beach, like experiencing sadness and alone, being alone. And then I also had great friends and went to beautiful places. It was like everything packed into 10 days. And I came back with this full grown beard, just absolutely exhausted, like plopped down on my couch. And I was like, what was that? And it didn't even like integrate for a while. Like it took me time to even figure out what happened in India.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Wonderful. Thank you.
But I mean, there was some good because you kept going. You kept, how long before your next trip after that?
It was some time. So, okay. Yeah, that was 2016. 2018, I went to the jungle in Peru to do ayahuasca. That's a trip that called me in. And then
unintended.
After that was a crazy story how that happened. And then the dolphins were after that in 2019. And then finally 2020, that's when I just went all in and traveled for 4 years everywhere.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you talked about, Tara talked about alignment. Prior to that, you had mentioned balance, right? When we talked about the two lives. How do people know? Are there tells? Is there a self-inventory? How do you know that you're unbalanced? Maybe there's something personal that happened to you, but when people start to go through the journey, how can they kind of reassess and figure out, where they're at, where their equilibrium's at?
Sure. I think how you feel and your health are two very big telltale signs. For me, everything comes down to feeling. How do I feel in my life? I think most of us in this world live from the mind, including myself. I was just a mind guy my whole life. So it was a whole journey to get out of my mind and into my heart a little bit more. The mind can easily camouflage what's going on under the surface because the mind is so conditioned from society and friends and parents and all those things, um, to create this picture of our life that we should fit into, or that we should strive for, or like it should be this type of career, this type of money, or I should be this much happy. And it's just an analyzation at the end of the day. It can be more stressful than anything else. You could just literally stop and take some moments and put your hand over your heart and be like, how do I feel overall in my life? Am I more stressed more of the time than not? Is that stress a good kind of stress or a bad kind of stress? When I say that, like, I feel like the good stress is when you got really important goals and things that mean something to you, and you're pursuing your passions and there's work involved, you're naturally always going to get a little stressed out. But if you always feel like you are just barely have your head above water and you're not getting much of a return on your energy, that's how I look at it. Our energy is our highest currency. So you have to look at where you're plugging it in and where you're spending your time. And if you're not being filled back up in some kind of way, you're not feeling nurtured,
Love that.
truly
That's really good.
happy. Yeah, and everyone knows this, just no one takes the time to think about it. And most people do, so a lot of people do know it, but they're not willing to admit what's going on because they're too scared to let go of all that they're holding up. So, all that being said, honesty with oneself.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, so much there. But that's so true how the energy, if it's just a one-way street, right, and you're not getting anything back, I mean, that's going to lead to the exhaustion and the anxiety and the tiredness and the overwhelming feelings when they shouldn't be there, necessarily. One of the things that I wanted to talk about too, and it's something that I don't see there. A lot of these things have been discussed, and there's different approaches and angles. But one of the things that I don't see people trying to kind of figure out as much is that first step. There's that fear. I think it's also a lack of confidence that I see a lot, especially with men. Sort of a certain age where they kind of tried a lot of different things maybe, and they're kind of just stuck in the cycle, and they don't feel like they can take that trip, right? Especially if you do feel like you're alone or you don't have anybody there to go for the ride with you, right? A buddy. You said you had actually overcome that, right? You were planning maybe on taking some kind of journey with a buddy, and then they kind of backed out, or you lost touch with them, so you kind of had to go solo. But for a lot of people, that can be real difficult. So how do you light that spark? How do you build the courage to to try to balance? I mean, it's a big leap for a lot of people, and it's a big leap for everyone, really. What can we do to try to kind of encourage people to get started?
Yeah, good question. Well, courage is built through experience. It's not built through convincing yourself to be courageous. I found in my own journey that the more I tried to be courageous without taking any big steps, the more I just stayed where I was. One thing that comes to mind is to take a look at where you are versus where you want to go to determine, which one has more pain and which one might have more freedom for you. So I said, all right, is the is the fear of the unknown greater than the pain of staying where I'm at? And I knew that the pain of staying where I was at was immense. And I really looked at my future and said, can I see myself where I am 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And the answer was like, I sure hope I'm not here. And so I spent so much time just like hoping and wishing that something would come rescue me. I was like, purpose is just going to drop out of the sky and pull me out of this. But it never did. It all comes down to us. We are the only ones that can move ourselves forward. And there will always be fear. If there wasn't, then there'd be nothing to learn and no growth to be had. I truly believe that everything we truly desire is on the other side of fear. And even if the thing doesn't work out the way you thought, you're going to learn a ton about yourself. And the experience in its own is going to give you feedback, pointing you closer towards your true path. I would also say, like, first, it's important to have an intention. It just comes back to the honesty and the clarity thing that I was just talking about. What would I like for myself? What are some things that I want to try? What are the steps that I would need to take leading up to that, so you can start to develop a plan? And then it's not a big complicated map. The first step is probably going to look different for everybody, but I really believe we have our own map inside of us if we're just willing to listen to what our impulses are telling us. So the first step could be just, hey, I'm going to get online. This is what I did. And I'm going to start to research, and if, for me, it was travel vloggers. Let me see what people are doing out there. Let me find something that I can absorb every day that's going to give me some inspiration. Oh, and I'll say this. I just made a video on this today. I know I'm saying multiple things. I'm just kind of dropping them as they come. I feel it's important to create a level of anticipation for a future that is compelling for you. So basically dream a little bit, like create a vision, even if it doesn't need to stay the same. It can change as you go. You can readjust. But if there's not something pulling you forward to get excited about, rather than just waking up every day and trying to push yourself through some stuff that you don't want, it's hard to do it that way. When you have like a vision pulling yourself forward, when you know that what you want is on the other side of fear, and you know that courage is only going to come in the action, then you will start to build evidence for yourself as you take the actions. And it's the evidence like, oh, I did this and now I feel courage. There's the evidence that I can do it. But you'll never get the evidence if you don't take any steps. You can't find it in your mind. You'll only find the evidence that you can't do it. So you got to build evidence also.
Yeah, that's so nicely done, nicely said. I think you actually did that in a way with your journey, right? You you did the 10 days, right? And then you did, you took a couple more steps, because we definitely also don't want to go the other extreme where it's like, I'm just gonna go and I'm never looking back, right? I mean, if that's your path, that's fine. But I did little snippets of that, and it doesn't always work out that well. But you mentioned so many great points. There's this, I've been reading a lot about the prediction error, right? And we're constantly trying to predict what's going to happen next. But it seems as though as our courage goes up, our trust in, the universe goes up, and we worry less about this, predicting what's going to happen next. And you also mentioned a really important part is that fear on the other side of fear, there's usually something magical. And I still to this day will sometimes hope. I have those moments where I'm like, I just want somebody to come in and scoop me free of what I'm trying to get through. Like, so, I think there is that human element. Even as you do a lot of hard things, there can be that. So I just want to humanize this journey, this spiritual experience, as you so nicely and eloquently have. So thank you for your courage, and thank you for sharing the human element to navigating some of these tougher journeys. Can you speak to limiting beliefs, right? So that's another one. I know I'm kind of throwing you on the spot with a lot of the lingo, the spiritual lingo. Limiting belief, well, it's a very real thing. But sometimes I think we don't even dissect, what is a belief, right? Is a belief just something that we think repeatedly? Is a belief something that was instilled in us? Like, how do we get rid of the limiting beliefs? Why are they there? Or do we need them?
Yeah, that's great. I like going beyond the spiritual lingo too, because we don't take the time to break these things down enough. When I think of beliefs, I just think of how I look at and interpret the world in my everyday life. So often the way that we do one thing is the way that we do everything, because we're creatures of habit. So we picked up our identity from somewhere, from tons of experiences and traumas and parents and friends and all of these things. Well, all our identity is just a big pile of beliefs that we have that came from somewhere. So introspecting a little bit about, what are my beliefs, just to even get clear on how do I see the world, as opposed to just, most of the time we're just on our automatic, and like we're not really thinking about what we believe. We're just acting it and kind of spewing it out there on other people and things like that. I went in these transformational trainings like a while back, and I remember they used to just trigger the heck out of people with this like belief stuff, and people would be like getting out of their seats when they would when their beliefs would get challenged. And one of the things that I remember most from that training that always stuck with me is be willing to see life other than the way that you have it. And most people are just like, well, I'm this, I'm that, I do it this way, this is how I need this much money, all of it, right? Being open is like being open to what you don't even know that you don't even know. So limiting beliefs are things that we've carried that that probably aren't even ours. Like, unless we were babies and we sat down, we were like, well, I'm going to believe this, and this about my life, and this is how I'm going to go about it and make money. Like, we're not even capable. We're just sponges that absorbed it from somewhere. So our outlook on everything is usually coming from somebody else that gave it to us, and we just took it on unknowingly. So again, it's just that curious, playful investigation of like, how am I operating? Where, is there much change in my life? Am I getting the things that I want? And if I'm not, what am I believing about myself and the world and how I operate in the world that might be shutting those doors, that might be keeping me from that? And if you set the intention to just always catch that as often as you can, because sometimes it's hard to just figure out all your beliefs on a piece of paper, you kind of got to go through the day and just analyze yourself a bit and be like, well, how did I do that? And who did I shut down? And where did I shut down? And where did I, feel bad about myself? I know that was a little bit wordy, but yeah, it's it's a big topic. Last thing I'll say about it is you always have choice of what you believe. So most people are just so righteous about what they believe and not willing to see it another way that nothing can change in their lives. When you're willing to say, you know what, I'm just open to seeing it a different way. I don't even know what that way is, but I'd love to like call something in that I don't even see. And that's when your results in the world will start to change.
Yeah, and it's I love that because it's like you don't have to know, right? Like kind of also going back to our mind, right? We are living so much of our life in our mind. It's like, well, we have to know. We have to know now, or we have to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. We got it all figured out, an illusion of safety. So I think kind of back to your curiosity. It's like, get curious. Like, oh, is that my belief? Is that a borrowed belief? Is that a BS belief? And
Yeah.
where might, I benefit if I play around with changing them or creating new ones, or, and we can always, erase the board, right? We can always like, oh, no, I tried that one on. I don't like that one. Let me try something different.
Yeah. I'd love to just say real quick, it brought something up in my mind as you're saying it. Here's one example. The world is unsafe. So many people think the world is unsafe because of what just happened in the last several years and because of what news and television shows us. When I went traveling, I had all different people saying, don't go there, it's dangerous, don't go there, don't do this, don't do that. And they had never even been outside of their own hometown. So traveling gave me real, like, feet on the ground experience to see the beauty and how amazing and open the world is and how many opportunities and how many things I don't know about myself. You can't think your way to that because you've never experienced it before. So just like you're saying, we don't have to even know what the belief is. We can choose something to go with for now, but then something might come along and be like, wow, that's amazing. All right, now I believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can be very disempowering to give our sense of agency away to some potential fearful world that doesn't exist in in some ways. So yeah, actually, could you give us an example of someone that you worked with that had like changed a belief, and they didn't even maybe realize that was a belief they were holding on to, like the world is a fearful place?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I've got, let's see, somebody that I'm working with right now, right? Um, has been holding a belief that as they get older, they get dumber because they're father told them that when he was younger, like, as you get older, you're just going to get dumber. And so, he then all
That's
these,
an incredible answer.
yeah,
Because I was thinking of like all the possible things you might say, and that was not the one. But it's fascinating. But it's just this wasn't the one. This is really interesting.
yeah, it's wild. And like, that's something that's not ours, for that father just could have been insecure or holding that way about himself. But if you're told that when you're young, you don't really have the tools to really be able to gauge if that's true or not, or the real world experience. And then it goes on subconsciously, and you just think like, oh, my life is closing on me as I get older, and there's less opportunities, and regrets. I should have done this, and that when I was younger, and now time has passed me by and I've missed the boat. And I think that's something that really a lot of people struggle with as they get older, because time goes by fast. But truly, we get wiser as we get older. We are wise in our experiences. And it just, that's how I see it. It opens up so much more. So if you can help someone create that shift by seeing where the first belief came from, and then taking on the new, call it a story because you're just adopting it. I get wiser as I get older. Then you could practice that belief every day, and then you'll start to see the evidence of that more.
That's awesome. Let's talk on the other side of things. I have this personal little project of this idea about different places and their kind of energy fulcrums, like focal points that the Thailands of, whether they're Colorado or Thailand, you
Sedona.
had said Sedona. There's all these places that people find themselves drawn to in a way. Costa Rica, there's a lot of places in India for sure. What was some commonalities either about the locations that you loved? This is a two-parter. The locations, either the energy from nature that was there, or the people that you hung around with. Even when you're solo traveling, right? You're never really alone, like unless you're going to Antarctica or somewhere so remote, right? Camping out in northern Canada. What were some of the common things that really drew you and you'll remember from those places? The land itself and the location, but also the people that were there, cross cultures. What were some of the things that a lot of the people that you like to surround yourself when you were there had in common? What were these open-minded people, whether it's something about that, whether it's acceptance, whether it's joy, peace, love? What did you find out there? Because I think that it's hard to change people, but it's kind of great to build a tribe of people that are open-minded and don't have limiting beliefs, and that can be very powerful.
Yeah. Excuse me. Another great question. Yeah, I mean, first, we're really I believe, the sum of the people that are around us. And if you're not being open and inspired by the people around you, it's kind of hard to change your identity. So one of the biggest advantages that travel had to me is that it plucked me out of my modern civilization environment in the US here, and just brought me to places where I would have these communities and people that were also like really wanting to open their minds and really call in their true selves and what's important for them in their lives. Now, in the beginning of my travels, my goal was to travel to high energetic places. Vortex is one word you can label them with. I've just always been fascinated in that. And really an energy guy. I understand vibration, knowing that we're just energy at our core. So my thought traveling was like, if I could get myself to vibrate in a high enough state, then I just know that I'm going to attract the things that I want. At the same time, I had a spiritual teacher who reached out to me, and she said, Mike, I'm creating a mystery school, which is going to be like an ancient day school of occult wisdom, but we're going to do it in a modern day. It's going to be like 2 years. We're going to do it online, but we're going to travel to 4 vortex activation centers on the earth over these 2 years. And I was like, this is amazing. This is what I wanted to do anyway. Wow. So that was confirmation. Yeah. And I started, the first place I went to, Sedona, Arizona. I was in Mount Shasta. I was in Costa Rica. Bolivia is one of the centers of the world. I was there on Lake Titicaca. Peru, where I've lived on and off the past 2 years, is some say still the most purest place on the planet. There's so much ancient wisdom that comes from there. So many indigenous people that are still carrying out traditional ways that are thousands of years old. I'm kind of answering part of the second part of this question too. Like, I got to see how people live with the lands. and how their traditions were based in ancient wisdom that is simple and makes sense and works with and in harmony with nature. When I first went to the Western United States, I spent 3-4 months there hiking, and I fell in love with nature because I never really went to nature before. So that started to just melt away the whole, like, I always need to be doing something self from the corporate world. And that's when I first really began to value nature. So I kept targeting places that had just brilliant nature. I was in, Bali as well. All of these places, like Bali, they call the island of the gods, like they, for who knows why, certain places on the planet are extremely strong energetically. They call them portals of sorts. There's perhaps extraterrestrial activity going on there. Perhaps the energy is from old civilizations that lived there, or just ley lines in the earth, all different reasons. But I can't always say why I was attracted. And I think that's true for many people that get attracted to these places. They don't know why. But this energy in these places serves as an accelerator, as a companion for evolution. And so it can really expedite your process, whatever your process might be. You can end up in one of these places and you could just be like, you might not even know why you're there, but it might bring up all of your like shadow work for you to look at, so that you can clear it and that you could move on and that you can attract new things into your life. Also in these places, a lot of creative people go. A lot of people looking to create offerings and businesses and new projects and seek other people who are creating so they can co-create together. And a lot of people are drawn to these natural places that still have this natural energy because there's not a whole lot of them left on the earth. And where we are, I feel especially like in the US, everything is just, a lot of it's bogged down, cell phone signals and towers and just like hectic life and stimulation to where you can't feel yourself. You're just constantly caught up in overthinking all the time. So as the energy gets more pure, the mind settles down, the nervous system settles down, and we could begin to tap into like what's actually going on within us. And I find that for me, that played a very important part in allowing my journey to unfold and show me who I was. When I was in Peru, the last thing I'll say here is, well, two things. When I was in these particular nature kind of places, people were much deeper. They were talking about real things. The conversations went deep. We all taught each other something. I thought I was the only one from home traveling. Nobody did this where I was from. Out there, everyone's doing it. All these people took off for some kind of reason, some kind of story. So you find commonality, you find collective healing, you find support. And I never really knew what true community was. I was like, what? Okay, we all have communities. I didn't know anything about it. When I went to Peru, I ended up in this place called Pisac in the Sacred Valley. And then I learned truly what community was with all the people I met, how we help each other out, what we're up to each day. And it was having an inspiring environment around me every day. So I'll wrap it up in this note. Like, you could either stay in an environment that's not serving you. And I know it's not perfect for everyone. It's not easy for everyone to get away, but you can make trips to nature and even things right around you just to kind of calm down. It can feel like having the foot on the gas and the brake pedal when you're in an environment that's very overactive and stimulating and you're trying to make any kind of progress. Or you can seek out tribe and people and places and nature that are naturally going to support your natural energy and like give you an extra 50% boost. Okay, one more thing. I know a lot's coming to me. One of my biggest lessons traveling was that we need to be connected to the land again. And too many people have lost that connection. And I believe that's why we have, one of the reasons we have so much depression and anxiety in the world is because the earth is always supporting us and we're supporting it, right? It's a relationship that's always happening. But modern humanity has forgotten that. They've disconnected. So they've lost their life force. And so they don't have this core energy in them anymore that creates the stabilization and the natural love that's always feeding and nourishing us.
So that was officially the best answer that I've ever heard in terms of I don't even know what the question was actually, but I was
I hope I didn't go too
enthralled.
many directions. Yeah.
No, well, I mean, it's right up my alley. Oh, yeah, right, the travel part, because there's so many gems in there. But basically, I myself, my first big travel was Thailand, Koh Phangan, and I remember thinking like, why the hell am I in Thailand right now? Like, what is going on? How did I get here? Why am I here? Like, obviously I booked, no, I was not held, at gunpoint to go there, but I didn't know why until I got there. And I was like, oh my goodness. So yeah, I think, sometimes people do it responsibly, don't hurt anyone getting there. However, sometimes you do need to get there to feel it. And I would liken it to being submerged in nature, right? So we don't always have to go to the other side of the earth. If you really just submerge yourself in nature, like really, like go to the forest and feel yourself, right? Get away from the Wi-Fi, from the noise. Like that is when you don't have to even try, right? You don't have to do the really tough meditations. You don't have to do all the over like 10 different things a day. Like you can just be and really get a lot of clarity. So I really appreciate how you brought it all back to nature. That's the purest vibe there is, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. I got my my crystals here. I know what I need to do to take care of my energy field now, but before I even understood what that meant, I got there through nature. So I think that's always a valuable lesson that's accessible to most, is start with nature and submerging yourself there and really, really feel. Because when we are supported by nature, it makes it a lot less scary, at least to me. It's like, oh wow, like I'm being actually held by the universe. So yeah, definitely, to me, getting out of the noise and the energy. And it's almost like when you mentioned Peru, I mean, I just got this visual of like my heart opening, right? Because you don't have to try, right? When you find community, your heart just automatically is like, whoa, I just totally synced up with somebody else's pure essence. Like that to me is community. And so, there is a difference between, traveling and vacation. That's another thing I wanted to say, because
Oh
my
yeah.
mother would be like, "Oh, well, enjoy vacation," and I'm like, "Mom, I just spent 3 hours crying my eyes out. I'm not drinking Mai Tais right now." So there is a little bit of a difference, because we're not saying that it's going to be rainbows and butterflies per se, right? There is that shadow work. There is the stuff that we're carrying around us. So thank you for so eloquently expressing and explaining some of your journey. I must say, and I don't know if you could hear me, but I'm like booking my ticket to Peru because I haven't been there yet. Um, and I'd love to hear more about it. We could talk more later, hopefully. But where's your next destination? Or is there somewhere that you haven't been? Is there some little gem out there that you somehow didn't go, that you're reserving, or do you not know yet? Do you connect with your higher self? Do you get little like pings or aha moments of what to do next now at this point in your travels?
Sure. Yeah. And I love everything you just said. I could have, yeah, there's so many gems in that as well. And I just wanted to like you said something about like our natural vibe. It's hard to even know what your natural vibe is or how to nurture yourself until you're in an environment that shows you what it is. And nature does that. Biggest teacher. As far as traveling, I really got to the places that I really wanted to go. And I've always been a very faith-driven person. From the beginning of this trip, I read a letter out loud to the universe saying, please guide me and show me where to go and bring all the resources in. I trust. I'm not going to predict any of this. So every place always presented itself as, yeah, you could call it a connection to higher self. It would come through another person or a book or a sign or just an impulse on my end. Or in some cases, just, yeah, I really want to go to that place. Like I went to Portugal just because I love Christmas lights. So I went to spend the winter there, and that led me on a whole journey. After 4 years, I find that some of the guiding signs are very obvious in my life. For example, I returned to Peru a second time because my goddaughter was going there, and we made a deal that I would meet her there if she went. I came home to the States because my sister was having a wedding and I needed to be there for that. I wasn't going to miss it. And it's also at the same time where I had an opportunity. I just met this speaking mentor named Nick Santanastasso, and I took him on in his program, and it was in the States. So I felt that, okay, now I've collected my travel stories in my journey. I got to just go wherever I want, flying by the winds, enjoying. And I feel that that time for me, that cycle has kind of come to completion. Now I'm focused on creating my speaking career, finding stages to speak on, and figuring out the ways in which I can serve and give all this back that I've learned. So I'm literally in my parents' house right now in Connecticut while I take their stability and get to connect with family again while I figure out the next steps. I believe that I definitely believe I'm going to be traveling again, but it will be with the purpose of going somewhere to speak or to help run an event or a retreat or build something or contribute to humanity in some kind of way. And I know that I'll still get to have amazing travel experiences, but it came to a point for me where I was like, I've had enough of that. There was this hole in my stomach. There was something burning that it's time to build something and do something with all of this. Um, so I don't know the next step. I don't even know how long I'll be here. And that's the way I've always played it. I never had a plan when I went a place. I just said, God, spirit, universe, I call it all different things sometimes. You guide me when it's ready. You let me know when. And then something like that, like a family member or an event or something guides me along. I will say one place I haven't been that I would love to go is Africa. I was in Egypt, which is technically in Africa, but I don't consider Egypt like deep Africa on the plains, safari, animals, culture. I really want to experience that at some point.
Well, Brian, I think Brian has some ties to Africa. Brian?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I do. I have my in-laws actually just traveled back to Kenya, and we've been blessed to visit them a couple of times. So, yeah, it's definitely amazing, and the both the people and nature. So that will be another amazing chapter in your story for sure. Actually, it is fascinating. That kind of did get me started, that whole connection on my journey in a lot of ways, because there is something about the cross cultural, like those truths that are universal across cultures that I find fascinating. You know, when you could have Greco-Roman philosophy match things that were going on in, say, like China and India. Ever since, I've always just thought that was just something special. But two things that, before I forget, that I wanted to get to, and definitely we could talk later about that. One thing was, you kind of touched on it before. I wanted to talk about two what I would consider kind of misconceptions, right? So as I am over the 2020s and modern Western civilization and screens and all that as much as the next person, but I do think that the United States is such a big country and there are so many opportunities that people sometimes don't know, that just aren't utilizing them enough, right? And we talk about traveling to all these places. Some people listening, might not have the means, the wherewithal, the ability to do that right now. I think that they can make it happen. You and Tara surely do. But in the interim, you definitely can go out there. I mean, you can drive. There's nowhere that you can be living right now that where you can't drive, 90 minutes to 2.5 hours anywhere and get to the ocean. We have two coasts, get to a forest, right? Get to a mountain, get to some hills. I mean, it's a big country. So even if you're living in a really densely populated area like the three of us are, I mean, if you drive in any, certain directions, there's a lot out there where you can get to a beach and just be with the waves yourself, get to a really dense forest where you feel like you're the only one on a trail, start bushwhacking somewhere. So there are a lot of opportunities, even if you're in an urban environment. So I think people listening should try to get grounded and get in touch with nature, even if it's temporary, like you guys have been suggesting to them. That's the first thing. And then the second thing was, you had kind of touched on it a little bit with, I've always been a little, I didn't know if you were used the word spiritual. We've talked a lot about kind of spirituality, but like Tara said, just ebbed and flowed so naturally. We haven't really been talking about any structure or formal spirituality. But was there kind of a latent blueprint that kind of Had you readied for 2016? Had you gone to church or temple growing up, and taken some of the best things about maybe some Judeo-Christian teachings, and then you were kind of primed to expand and get ready for what we would consider more of kind of an Eastern style spirituality? It's a personal question, but you seem like you're ready to, answer whatever. So I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I'd love to answer. And this is something that I want to really share more with people because it's important. I think spirituality is this word that throws a lot of people off. It's a packed word. There's so much loaded that comes with it in many different aspects. Many people were really turned off by spirituality young at a young age. Many people have their spirituality that they're very proud of. Many people have an aversion to spiritual people, whatever that means, because they've seen some things they think are just like weird or unrealistic. At the end of the day, I really believe, look, we're all spiritual, whether you want to believe you are or not. Okay. We have a spiritual essence that is being lived through a physical vehicle of the body. So, meditating is just as spiritual as going to play baseball. It's the same thing. Whatever brings that spirit alive in you, you're always connected. You don't have to always try extra hard. I feel like a lot of the practices just help you refine the connection and focus in a little more and feel it more. I was raised Jewish. I'm very proud to be Jewish. I would not consider myself a religious person. I got away from it very young. I thought it was just kind of something I was supposed to do and supposed to go to temple. And I had a bar mitzvah. It was a lot of fun. The best part was just the party with the kids and all that. It never clicked with me. I didn't feel like really I had enough experience in my life to really engage and ponder what my own spirituality would be. I was just given something like most people are. So for me, it went from that to having none, to not believing in it, to saying I'm agnostic or I'm atheist. What is this person in the sky that people talk about? It doesn't make any sense to me. What started for me is, best way I would describe it is like a breadcrumb trail. I think we're all naturally evolving spiritually, which I feel is like the connection to the part of us that we can't see in the physical form, that emanates our emotions and our passions and our impulses and our intuition. You call it a gut feeling. It's our inner roadmap. There's so many ways to describe it. I consider spirituality like the acknowledgement of that connection. And what happened is like a breadcrumb trail just started to be laid out. Somehow I came across the book, The Secret, the big famous book that many people like, many people have judgments on, whatever, but it started talking about what synchronicity is. And I was like, yo, this is the coolest idea ever. Like synchronicity. I mean, there's things that are connecting that I'm not putting together that could be lining up in my life, creating magic. So it was more like this inner kid in me that just wanted to explore the magic. And I read this book. I thought it was so cool. And then the more I engaged and got fascinated with that concept, then I started seeing synchronicities in my life. Coincidences that seem too good to be true. Things just lining up. Thinking about something in one moment and then seeing it on a street sign in the next. And somebody calling me to talk about it in the next. And they started to feel like arrows pointing me in a different direction. Then I came to a therapist because I was so miserable in my life around 2013, 2014. And she began to move energy in me. She was an energy worker as well. First time I ever felt someone move energy in me from across the room, I was like, whoa, what is that? We also worked with hypnotherapy, and I began to become exposed to modalities that I didn't know of, that I didn't think were real, that I didn't think existed. So it was like a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time. And what kept bringing me along was just my willingness to say, yes, that interests me. I'm open. I want to learn more. And let's just keep going. And things got more intense and more intense and more intense, and beautiful and beautiful. And eventually over the years, it's like tools just kept being thrown in on my path. There's this saying by Rumi that says, what you seek is seeking you. So when you have an interest and pursue something, even if you don't know the way, you're like, I'm just going to set an intention to learn more about this thing that I don't know about. I don't know where the information is going to come from. I have no idea. Like when you do that, you tell the universe, you tell, these divine higher powers that be, like, I'm ready, bring a little bit more in, and then doors just start opening and it starts coming to you. So it just really pulled me along. And then it became teacher after teacher coming into my life, and then Reiki, and then transformational training, and then plant medicine, and all these things that just kept opening me and opening me. But my spirituality is something that is just, I took ideas that I heard along the way and investigated them. And that's really all it is. It's research. Again, be playful with it. Like the second you start taking spirituality as this like heavy, refined, restriction, rule driven thing, it really takes the spirit out of spirituality, So I describe it in many ways, and I don't feel that there's even a need for me to justify or describe what it is to anyone, because it's my personal connection within me that I feel to the all. And I tangibly feel this force guiding me and contributing to my life the more that I connect with it, pray to it, sing to it, whatever. And I respect all religions, and I love when people pray, and kind of like you were talking about with Africa, like seeing these connections in different cultures. That was one of the greatest things of traveling, was like to see all the different ways that people connect spiritually, knowing that it's all pointing to the same thing and that everybody gets to do it in the way that feels best for them.
Yeah, that's that's the perfect answer again. Thank you for that. But I think to Brian's point, it's so accessible, because really we could just wake up every morning and be like, I'm ready. I'm open to learning something about myself or the world. Like, I'm open to receiving something new. So it
Mm-hmm.
can be that easy. You don't have to get on a plane yet. Maybe that's, later on, years later, lifetimes later, whatever. But anyone can do this, right? Anyone can say, like, I'm ready. I'm open. Show me a sign, or, play with the universe, like, show me the sign just today, show me something fun, send me a doll, or show me, something like, be playful, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what you're bringing it down to, is a level of playfulness, and the energetics behind that will open up so many doors, that it doesn't have to be this like tedious, like, all right, well, I got to do this spirituality 101, and then I got to do this, and then I got to do this. I actually have a spiritual teacher, or on and off, but she's like, I don't want you to ever use the word spiritual, because to your point, it's playing baseball, it's singing, it's going for a walk, is the same as meditating, right? It's everything is literally spiritual, in my opinion, in my understanding of the way that I see it now. So I really enjoyed that. It was a very, universal answer for everyone. And to kind of switch into a little bit more specific answer, if you want to give one answer or not, a book that has inspired you over the years, or, it can be fiction, nonfiction, something that sticks out just by me saying that, you would suggest somebody to read.
We're so synced up. You're asking me all the questions that I want to answer right now that no one's asked me. Yes, my favorite book is called The Surrender Experiment, and it is written by Michael Singer. And I may not have time to go into all this, but the gist is, I read this book, and it's this magical story about this man's life. He also wrote The Untethered Soul. That's a popular book out there, same author. And it speaks into these synchronicities. It shows a man who surrendered to life and what was coming his way and said yes. And all these magical things that you just cannot make up started happening and led him on this wild life journey. And I said, I want to live my life like this man. And real quick, like in the same year that I read that book, Michael gets inspired by another book in his life that he talks about in this book, called The 3 Pillars of Zen. Like, his friend gave him this book as a teenager, and it's like a how-to on how to meditate. So he's talking about it in The Surrender Experiment. I found out that my great uncle, who is deceased, wrote this book called The 3 Pillars of Zen that Michael was talking about in that book in the same year. And
that's wild.
it was the greatest synchronicity that has ever happened to me. Sometimes I tell this to people, they're like, I don't get it. I'm like, no, you don't get it. I'm like, you can't make this up. And so I started to study that path. And for me, that's like a confirmation that I'm on the right path. It's like an ancestor coming through the ages, like that I get to reconnect with. And I actually ended up seeing a psychic and asking her about this. And she said, look, you're reading about yourself in your uncle's book. I read my uncle's book, and she's like, you're someone in that life, in a past life in that book. And it opened up this whole thing. I ended up going to Japan to like investigate that because my uncle studied there for 13 years, became a Zen Buddhist priest, came back to America and wrote this book. But this whole thing happened from this surrender experiment book. And I would just say simply that that is a book if you're looking for like the evidence or where to just start playing around. Because, you know, like Tara, to your point about just like you could wake up and just be like, you know what, show me a sign and play with it. Because most people just don't believe what they haven't seen before until they've seen it. So this book is just packed with like this amazing story, and it gave me so much inspiration.
Wow. Oh, well, you know, I don't know if it's a good thing that you dropped that massive bomb on us at the end or not, but that's definitely part 2 is coming.
Okay, cool.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But the Untethered Soul, you know, was one of my first books, and I'll never forget. Like Michael Singer, I could still hear him in me, like when he talks about your heart, like stay open all the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? I have to stay open. Like, I don't know, but there's something about that man that's like, okay, well, if he says it, you got to do it, you know? So thank you so much for that answer. I'm still incubating with that synchronicity. That's definitely one of the greatest I've ever heard.
Yeah, I love magic. So and like you were saying, like that, like the being the child and just kind of playing, and the curiosity we touched on many times. They say that children are the most connected to spirit earliest in life, like when you come in as a baby and when you're a young child, because all of the things in life that condition you aren't in the way yet. So there's this direct connection to source. And sometimes you see kids speaking to the air, and their parents are like, oh, that's nice, he has an imaginary friend, but they're actually like seeing something that adults can't see. So when you call upon that energy, that inner child, that playfulness, you're syncing yourself back up in alignment with that playful, curious energy. And that is like, I believe, the energy of the universe that speaks the most.
Beautiful, beautifully said.
Yeah, that's amazing. I had a question in a sec, but a comment, because we said playfulness a couple times. You started with creativity and playfulness early on. And I'm always thinking from some people in the audience, the uninitiated, like you guys' point of view. We say playfulness, and Michael does, and it's not to trivialize it. I mean, it's so important. It's not to make it flippant or, you know, something that's you know, not critical, right, to this journey, because that's the creativity and that's how you make the magic, right? What we need to do is go back to that youthful kind of like hope, and there's just like the sky's the limit, right? Making the possible happen and get out of this stagnation and in this stuck place that so many of audience members are in from time to time, and you know, more times than not often. And you have to not be afraid to take chances, and that's what I've loved about a lot of your message. You know, you talked about feelings and passion. A lot of times I think what distinguishes you from many of our other guests, and some that are, you know, in similar fields and, you know, in this space, is that intellectually, I think I do believe in temperance being a good balance for me. And I think, you know, the world writ large, I mean, could benefit from temperance overall. Um, you know, something that I've thought for years, you know, in an Aristotelian like temperance and an Eastern kind of, you know, Buddhist, you know, not too high, not too low, but you're not afraid to, you know, follow your passion and feelings, to kind of take it to the next level and like really embrace that joy and, you know, wherever your spontaneity takes you, and that love and that passion and those highs. What I'd like to do every interview is kind of get, you know, some actionable, tangible advice for people listening and watching. How can they go to experience those highs without it kind of rebounding them into a lower spot, right? Because everything does have a way of balancing it out. And if you're coming off an amazing trip with amazing people and an amazing vortex, and then you have to come back to doldrums, what you might think of the day to day. But what do you do? What does Michael do to avoid those pitfalls and those bounce backs, those bounce downs, right? How do you keep yourself on the level when you might have had an amazing experience or moment and you don't want it to go in the opposite direction at some point thereafter? What do you do to keep yourself balanced, in alignment? Do you have a daily practice or something in a ritual that you do often for yourself?
Yeah, so many thoughts. This is a good question. Um, well, what comes to mind is this. I think it's the law of rhythm. It's one of these principles of the universe. There's like a pendulum. Every time the pendulum swings to one side, it's going to swing equal and opposite to the other. So if you have a high experience, at some point, you're going to go to the other side of that. One of my core values or acknowledgments that I practice often is remembering that um, um, contrast is one of the greatest teachers of life. So I take that and I say, all right, like you have to know the feelings you don't want and what's not working to know what is working and to know how that feels and to know how to appreciate that. So first I would say it's very important. The whole spectrum is really important to experience all of it. But most people have this fear and think that there's something wrong if they're going to experience the negative feelings or the fear or the sadness or the crash. And you can help set yourself up by saying, number one, there's nothing wrong with it. Number two, there's nothing to fear from it. And the fear will come naturally anyway. It always does. But it helps to remember in that moment when you kind of hit that low that there's nothing wrong. You can ask, like, what is my life showing me in this moment? What are the gifts of this moment? What can I learn about myself in this moment? Because we don't evolve and learn just in the good times at all. Like we have to go to the other side, but most of humanity just has it as like, it's all wrong to go there and I should just feel good all the time. And if I don't, there's a problem, right? Now, when you're in the good moments, when you're in these experiences of high bliss, I like to anchor them. This is one tool that I do. So I look at my environment, and when I'm feeling really alive, like on that dolphin trip, when I was by the shore and I'm like, I want more of this. I close my eyes, I put my hands over my heart, and I fully feel where I am. I let it in. I think about what I just went through. I think about what I learned. And I tell myself, I'm like, look, Mike, you're going to go back. This was a very high experience. We do have to return to, the other parts of life, and there is a chance. In fact, it most likely isn't going to feel like it does now in this moment. But taking some time to anchor the feeling and what you felt and learned in that moment, you can call upon that moment in memory in those harder, more challenging times. And that's often what gives you the courage and the inspiration to work your way through those times, right? And so, yeah, anchoring, acknowledging there's nothing wrong, like the fear and those emotions, they're always working with you as well. And the other thing I wanted to say is integration. I think often we go into these great experiences, like let's say you go to a retreat, or even if you're just like in your business and somebody comes in and gives a seminar, right? And you heard something really inspiring that lit you up and motivated you. If you don't do anything with it and you just move on to the next thing quickly on automatic, then yeah, the event just becomes some nice high thing that happened one time that you didn't really pull anything from to implement into your life. So journaling is a great practice. What did I learn? What did this show me? What did this open in me? What did I feel here? And how am I going to apply this in my life moving forward, knowing that there's going to be some swings in the other direction? And how can I use this experience when I'm in that other place? And I think that overall helps bring a more harmonious, integrative experience of life that's not so up and down and up and down. And I kind of see as like these high and low waves, the idea, like you said, temperance, sometimes is to get them more like little waves that go up and down. The more you surf them too, the more experience you have, the easier it gets sometimes.
Yeah, I love that.
That's brilliant answer.
You both brought up really good points, and we're coming out of the new age like positivity. I think we're in a new age, right? So it's not all high vibe, good vibe, no bad days, So I do think we're starting to hopefully be on the tail end of that, because there can be a lot of shame in that, right? There is this, oh, well, how could you be feeling negatively or bad? I thought you were above that. I thought you, ascended. I thought you were enlightened, or whatever it might be. So I really love how you're giving people permission to be in down there, even if they've been on this journey for decades, right? I still have those days where I'm like, how could I be here where I was, I thought I did this. I thought I put the work in. And so that's the reminder when I got to go back to the journal and be like, okay, let's go back, and maybe work with my inner child and reteach her something. So I really love how you humanize that and appreciate it. So, just a real quick follow up, like, what do people do? Like, should they feel bad about themselves if they've done all these wonderful things and then they're like, oh, wait, like, I'm feeling down in the dumps. I'm in a rut. Like, how, does it happen to the best of the best, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Of course, that's what makes people good, is being able to know and feel and be there millions of times in those dumps, or whatever word we want to put to them. We are human, and human is the full experience, which really requires acceptance of our full experience. And this is where you hear surrendering, control, and terms like that kind of come in, because we get experiences that we don't plan for, that come out of left field on a Tuesday afternoon, that we never see coming, and they take us here. And I think number one, like, feel your experience. All experiences are valid. Take yourself off the hook of needing to be somewhere where you're not, or be more advanced, or experience this less often. I feel, I've noticed it with myself and with people in general, that like shame and guilt is just so prevalent in our society, and feeling wrong, like we are wrong about something. Like, that's something I've struggled with in my life, that I picked up, from young. And I feel like sometimes like 50% of our experience of where we're at is just how we are, like, owning shame and guilt and wrongdoing after we do the thing, when we can lighten the load. And it's a practice. I mean, an overnight thing, like, oh my God, I still feel guilt all the time. But it's like, in those moments, to remember, I don't need to be feeling guilt. It's not helping me. It's not helping the planet. It's not helping anyone. It doesn't mean that I need to change it so fast, or there's going to be a problem. Like, don't put all that pressure on it. It's a little bit at a time. Like, all right, again, how can I experience my experience, and the best that I can talk to myself? This is where, like, championing yourself and the positive talk comes in. All right, I felt maybe guilty from this thing in my life, but I shouldn't right now, because I deserve to feel better, and I deserve to, like, work my way through this and not have to hang out here any longer than life tells me is necessary. So most of us get addicted unknowingly to these feelings of guilt and shame, and I did it wrong. And so we remain there. And there's a difference between feeling your experience, honoring it for what it is. I have had, like, rock bottom moments, calling out to God, like, just at the bottom, but still saying, like, thank you, God, for giving me this experience. Thank you for showing me that I am fully alive in this experience, and that I can experience these depths, knowing that on the other end of the spectrum, I'll really be able to experience all the positive things even more, because I'll have this beautiful contrast. It's all how you frame it. And but also, people just want to, like, hang out in that stuff forever. There does come a time where it's like, all right, I'm in my stuff for a long time now, my shadowy stuff. Like, what can I do to take myself out of this and move on? Not to avoid or distract, but to support and to like move into the next experience.
Yeah, love it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We've given you, we've gotten a little bit over. We've just gotten so much information, and just audience members are getting so much good stuff here, and so am I. It's really been a pleasure, Michael. Save the toughest one for last. Does Tua play again this season, and should Tua play again this season?
Wow. Talk about out of left field. I did not see that coming. I love your humanness and your wit, Brian. That's amazing. Um, Yo, I used to like identify with the Dolphins so much that they ran my life. Like when they lost, I would have a really bad week. They say he's
He's
coming
not
back.
perfect.
Yeah, they see like even letting up on that really helped my well-being a lot. As a Dolphins fan, no, it's been a hard journey. They say he's coming back. I think it was either week 8 or in 8 weeks. They said he was like concussion symptom free. This is a tough question. I believe, yes, he's coming back. Should he come back? This is hard because I have a personal high school football experience and I know what it's like to feel the passion of wanting to play. It's a tough call, but 3 career concussions is something to really consider. And there's a long life after football.
Right.
You want to be able to really like, do you maybe sacrifice all that for a couple of years, or do you make your investment in your future? I gotta leave it up to him. Yeah.
Great answer. I knew you wouldn't let us down with that. It's tough. It's tough to tell someone, that having such a personal experience, what to do. Right. It's really, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, that great. We've gotten so much great advice. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want some more. How can people connect with you online? What's the best way to follow you and learn more about what Michael Rosenberg can offer?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. The website will be up in about a week. It will be wakeupwithmike.com. Instagram is a great simple way right now. Wake Up with Mike. It's at Wake Up with Mike. I'm also on TikTok, Facebook, Michael Rosenberg, but if you want to send me a personal message, you can do it on Instagram. You can catch all my content there. And I'm going to have some direct offerings on wakeupwithmike.com on ways that you can work with me one-on-one or in group settings. And, as we go down the line, there'll be postings about future retreats and opportunities like that as well.
Excellent.
And I'm looking for stages to transformational public speak on. So if anyone's feeling the message and they know someone who has a stage or where this message might serve people well, please get in touch with me and reach out. I would love that.
Yeah. Listen to his content. It's binge worthy. You'll get entranced and feel the good vibes working your way through your system. So thank you so much, Michael. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I've had so much fun with you guys. Really, this has been an amazing experience.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. Let's do it again. Let's keep in touch.
For sure.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Journey to Your Best Self podcast. We appreciate you being part of this community. For more resources, insights, and ways to connect, head over to youroneself.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and Overcast. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep aligning your mind, body, and spirit, and peace, love, and self-discovery.